Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Project podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Ruse, and here at Momentum, we aim to challenge and champion committed men who are ready to take charge of their lives by mastering their mind, optimizing physical potential, and unlocking their power to find their mission. Whilst our work is predominantly with men, we hope that this podcast will provide value to all who choose to listen. So without further ado, let's jump in.
And a huge shout out to our first sponsor here, Be Spunky, the Australian men's health brand designed to support you to be the best you can be. Now, Blake Genoa and myself have been using this for quite some time now and absolutely love it. This product is something that we take every single day and drastically improves our training. But the one thing that I've noticed is my recovery time and the way that I feel the next day after training is so much better when I'm taking Be Spunky than when I'm not. And it is scientifically formulated to support optimum male hormone levels vital for strength, drive, and overall well-being. So big thanks to Be Spunky. You can find the link in the description below.
Cooper Chapman, the great man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm very well, thank you. Been a very busy morning, but great to sit down and have a chat with you and jump on the podcast.
Oh, good, mate. I'm glad you're. Is it a productive morning? Are you getting stuff done, or is it one of those just shits flying everywhere?
A bit of both. I had a pretty busy night last night launching a new product for my mental health business. So I was up quite late, had a little bit of a sleep in, but yeah, got up and started the morning off nice with a meditation and did a bit of reading, had a nice little brekkie and coffee, and then, yeah, just sort of been getting stuck into a bit of work. But yeah, no complaints. Busy's good if you're kind of doing something that aligns with your purpose.
Absolutely. Spot on. That's good, mate. You got your morning routine down pat, it sounds like. That's good to hear, mate. What got you into surfing, brother? Talk to me about that. So you grew up in Sydney in the Northern Beaches. Was it something that you were just super passionate about from a young age and kind of, like one of those little, I think you guys call it little surf gremlins or whatever, like
Groms.
Groms, that's it. Yeah. Surf groms growing up. I'm not a surfer, as you can tell, mate. So my lingo is, I'm no good. I'm one of those blokes that'll end up being on, Kook of the Day or something like that with my surfboard or wetsuit or something. So what got you down into the surfing path?
I think like most kids, my dad sort of surfed from a young age. I watched him go out surfing every day. And then from I wasn't one of those stories of from 4 years old, I was up on a surfboard. I kind of really started getting into it when I was 7 or 8, just with my dad. And then I, just loved the beach. I was down doing nippers, I guess what we call it in Australia, doing surf lifesaving from pretty young, from 5, 6, 7, just running around on the beach and just love the beach lifestyle. And then, for about 8, I got on a surfboard. Dad started pushing me into some waves and I picked it up quite quickly. And by the age of 10, I was competing in our local, we call them board riders events, and had quite a bit of success at quite a young age. Got picked up by Rip Curl as a sponsored surfer when I was about 11 years old. And that was the beginning. And ever since then, it's kind of just been, traveling the world and checking out beautiful places in the world and surfing and competing.
Mate, that is not a bad way to spend your early teens, I can imagine. So what was it like being sponsored as an 11-year-old?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I remember actually the main thing when you're that age is just I was getting free surfboards from, I think about 12 from my sponsor. I'd get 2 or 3 boards a year they'd give me for free, which was pretty special. And then from Rip Curl, it was just getting product. But back then it obviously takes a lot of pressure off your parents when they're sort of trying to drive you up and down the coast from event to event. When you have a box of clothes come every 3 months, sort of every season, I'd get a box of clothes and a box of wetsuits. So that was always pretty exciting when you're an 11 or 12-year-old kid. Getting all the new stuff was pretty cool. I remember I used to live about a 10-minute walk from school, probably 15-minute walk. Or if you ran, it was about 8 minutes.
Yep.
And I live on a very steep hill. And I remember as a kid, always when I knew I was kind of expecting a package, I used to sprint up the hill, and it was the best motivation to get home a lot quicker to see if the mailman had dropped off a box. But that's a pretty funny memory back as a kid, remembering that. Another one was actually, I remember getting a box of wetsuits and a big box delivered like the day before Christmas. And then the next day, Christmas, I was just like, oh, this kind of sucks. Like I got way better stuff yesterday from Rip Curl. But yeah, very grateful from that young age getting to, get looked after by sponsors. And I had a very successful junior career. I think when I was 14, I won an Australian title at Margaret River in Western Australia in the under 16s. And it's pretty cool. There's a really good structure around junior surfing, or there was back when I was there. It was called the ISA World Junior Games. And from 14, 15, 16, 17 in the under 16s and under 18s division, I was lucky enough to represent Australia and go to the World Games. And I think when I was 15, I went to Ecuador. When I was 16, it was in New Zealand. 17 was in Peru. And 18 was in Panama. So it's pretty cool to get to go and experience those places wearing the green and gold when you're that young. So very grateful to have that sort of upbringing and that experience from such a young age.
Yeah. And like pretty exotic places too. They're not your standard family, holiday destination, Ecuador, Panama. That's did you have a favorite surf spot growing up?
Growing up, another trip, I was very lucky when I was about 10 years old. I went to the Mentawai Islands, which is in Indonesia, which you ask pretty much any surfer in the world, and it's kind of the best surf destination ever. You go on a boat trip usually for 10 to 14 days and literally just sleep on a nice boat and drive from wave to wave based on conditions and get to surf like beautiful warm water and perfect reef breaks. And that's probably... I was very lucky. I got that experience when I was like 10 years old, before I was sponsored by Rip Curl, because my dad's a draftsman and got asked by a family friend who was kind of sponsoring me from a young age. They're called Planet X, actually. It was like an extreme sport thing. I think they're dissolved now, but they were looking to design a resort on one of the islands. So they took me and dad over because they wanted dad to look at the designs and help draft up a resort. So that was pretty cool to get to check that out from a very young age. But I think, like you said, the best place I probably went to at a young age was Indonesia, and I got to go back there a few more times again. So probably favorite surf destination I'd call is Indo.
Mate, that's I can only imagine how bloody cool of an upbringing that must have been, but also the challenges that come with not having your standard upbringing of going to school. And what was your education journey like growing up, or what was it super different, or was it just a case of every now and again you'd be pulled out of school for a week or 2 weeks as you go travel around the world and surf?
Yeah, I think it was definitely through that early years of high school. It was definitely like that. I mean, to be honest, I loved school. I loved education. I loved the structure and the getting to just go for 6 hours. I mean, there's obviously days like every kid when you're that age that you don't like it, but in the whole, looking back, I had a very good school experience. I was lucky I went to a sports high school and they were very supportive with my surfing. So I got to take off the time I needed without getting the pressure of like absence. And you hear a lot of sort of horror stories of young athletes in private schools or in Catholic schools that get very scrutinized with time off and get sort of booted out in year 10. But my school was a sports high school, so they were really supportive. So there was definitely moments where I missed like 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And I think in year 11 and 12, I definitely got a lot more busy when I started traveling, doing the junior series, we call it, in surfing. And that's a pretty full-time little tour where you're traveling quite a bit. They do try and line it up a lot with school holidays, but there was definitely a lot of time missed in year 11 and 12. I probably missed like at least 2 to 3 weeks of each term in year 12. So I probably missed like 25% of school, but I was lucky that I was, like I said, I really enjoyed my education. So I'd take my work away with me, make sure I kept up to date. And when I got back, the teachers were real supportive to help me catch up. And it was a really good experience, school for me. I finished year 12. I didn't do my ATAR and get my university index because I knew at that time I was getting paid quite well in year 11 and 12 I was sponsored by Hurley then. So I knew my kind of next couple of years were locked in by contract to be a surfer. So I didn't feel the pressure to go to uni. So I kind of just did a sport and rec course at TAFE while I was in year 12. And then I also just focused on subjects that interested me. Like I studied modern history, and that was probably my favorite subject. It was my worst subject academically, but it was my most interesting because I love going there and getting to learn why we live in the world we do today. So education was a big part of my childhood and I really enjoy it. And I think that's kind of what's carried through to the person I am today. I really to be honest, at school, I hated reading, but now I read a lot of books. I really am interested in just continuing to grow and continuing to learn and continuing to change, because I think that's kind of the way forward in life. If you're not growing, you're kind of stagnant and get very bored and very stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't imagine what I would have been like having been sponsored at such a young age, because you come across as such a, you know, we've had too many experiences meeting, but you know, we did that workshop together, and then you're obviously in the 12-week momentum mentorship at the moment. But you come across very humble. I think if I was to be sponsored at 10 or 11, you know, I think back to when I was playing rep footy, you'd get your jumper, you'd get your shorts or whatever, and you just wear that 24/7, basically strutting around like king shit.
Don't get me wrong. There was moments definitely when I was younger that I was a lot probably cockier than I am now. I think it kind of not comes with being a young, talented athlete with kind of a lot of opportunities. There was, definitely moments in my younger years, probably up until I was like early 20s, to be honest, where I was a little bit cocky and a little bit of a shit. But I think it just comes with maturity and understanding kind of perspective and empathy that no one really cares except for you when the ego is a very funny thing. But I think looking back, there was definitely moments, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not this perfect, humble guy from a young age. There is definitely kids that I see coming through now that are far more humble than I was. And I think it comes with maturity. So looking back, there was moments where there's things that I wasn't proud of, but I think as a whole, there was definitely always that appreciation. And that's something my dad drilled into me from a very young age, was appreciation, not expectation, and being grateful for what you have and not expecting the world. So that was my balance. So my dad was definitely a big value adding person in my childhood.
That's great, mate. That's you know, we all need those little clips behind the ear, no matter who we are. When we're a young boy or a young person, you know, we tend to step out of line a little bit. I know I certainly did. And I was similar. I had a dad that just drilled in, and a mum that just drilled in humble and gratitude. So what are there any moments, or is there a moment that sticks out that you wish you could take back when you look back, or a conversation, something you did where you're like, fuck, that was probably my worst moment? Or
there's definitely a couple. One that stands out, when I was sponsored by Hurley, we used to do training camps with Barton Lynch, who's a world champion surfer, very respected guy, and a guy that I do have a lot of respect for. But there was we had a training camp, and it was funny. We'd been training super hard for like 3 or 4 days. We were with like me and 1 or 2 of the other kids. And then Barton was like, I'll come down at 5 o'clock for a late session, and we'll get one more quick session in. And we kind of took down some soft top surfboards because the waves were really bad, and we trained all day and surfed all day, and we just wanted to have a bit of fun. And me and one of the other guys just went down on some muck around boards, and we were staying like just up the hill at Bungan Beach, or at Whale Beach in Sydney, and it was about a massive walk down these stairs from the house that Hurley put us up in for a few nights. And we walked all the way down with our boards, and then he's like, "What are you guys doing? Like, bunch of idiots! Like, got no respect for my training, blah, blah, blah." And at the time, I can't remember if I snapped back, but I remember kind of, because I hate confrontation. I'm a pretty timid, like scared little guy. But I remember kind of just going like, "Are you serious? Like, we've trained all day. We just want to go out and have a bit of a muck around." He kind of stormed off and went, and I think he left the session and pissed off, and we just went out and had a surf. And I remember he called, and I didn't think much of it. He kind of like got over it the next day. We had a good day. And a few days later, my dad comes storming in, super pissed off, and he said, "What have you done, mate? Like, Barton just called me. He's super pissed off at you. He said you're like disrespectful, like little shit." And I was like, and then I was like, like, screw this. And I think I would have been like 16 or 17. I just got so like embarrassed and bummed that I sort of didn't want to get in trouble for my dad. So just kind of like ran out of the house and like left for a couple of hours and had to like boil some steam. And I was like, I swear I didn't do anything that wrong. But I think that was just a good moment for me to reflect on and go like, you got to respect people when they, especially coaches and stuff, like they're only there trying to make you better. So that was a good learning moment. And I think looking back, I mean, me and Barton have a great relationship now. It's not like it was anything super disrespectful, but that was definitely a moment where I was like, that was probably that young, cocky little kid coming out in me. But good to look back on those moments.
Yeah. And what was the journey for you into, I guess, the personal development world, or into, you mentioned, you never read growing up. Now you love to read. We'll touch on your business or your company, the Good Human Factor, in a moment. But you've got your own business, and oftentimes with the work that we're doing at Momentum, there's such a barrier for men to kind of do the work. And one of the big things we notice is, like, men have pretty big egos, and we like to think that we've got life sorted and we've got it figured out. So what was your journey from professional surfer into, I am reading and I'm doing all this work and I want to start a business in the mental health space?
So the journey goes like this. I get to tell this story quite often. I've kind of landed on a way that I'm really happy with now, because I had a light bulb moment actually in the Momentum course when we're talking about origin stories. I was like thinking back to, like, where was a moment that actually like changed my way of thinking. So I lost an uncle to suicide when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I remember my dad coming down and having a cry to me, and it was the first moment I probably experienced empathy really strongly, and I was probably only 5 or 6. And from there, I kind of watched my dad suffer a bit of depression and anxiety growing up, and my mum kind of didn't understand it and would kind of be like, get over it, like a lot of women are when their husbands are going through stuff, which is a sad thing, but it's so common. So I kind of had that yin and yang growing up. I'd see my dad like want to go to counseling and want to go to psychologist, and he did, but my mum wasn't super supportive of it. And nothing against her, it's a very common thing. So I had that experience, and I kind of had this fear that I was going to fall into that mental health hereditary sort of trap, like mental illness runs in families. I'd lost an uncle to suicide. I'd watched my dad in and out of psychologists, not super frequently, but like maybe once or twice a year, he'll have like a moment where he's just like struggling. So I kind of understood that could be something that happens to me. And I remember very clearly, I was in California doing a surf comp. I was there with my manager. I remember I was sitting at this sushi restaurant. I remember sitting there after a tough loss, and I was just like, far out, like, am I depressed? Like, I was so disappointed and I was so bummed and in a really bad headspace. And I remember pretty clearly at that moment when I left that dinner, and the next day I went to the airport, I remember going like, I'm either going to let this be who I am and control me, or I'm going to try and make some changes and try and take responsibility for my mental health. And I bought a book at the airport that day. I think I bought a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's about, I don't know if you've read that, but it's really cool. It's pretty much the way she describes it is like hard work and dedication and passion trumps talent. And the harder you work, and there's all these different studies in the American Army and Navy and whatnot on the guys who are the most talented don't end up being the most successful and the best soldiers, because the ones who work hard and put in the time and effort overcome that. So I felt that was a great first book for me to really dig into. And like I said, I didn't really read much through school and hated reading, but now, I mean, I read pretty much every day now because it's such a great way to learn stuff. And from there, I started really becoming attached to these self-development books because I was scared of this mental health hereditary sort of line my family had. So I was like trying to pick and choose little bits and pieces that worked for me when it came to my mental health, and trying to give myself a bit of an action plan and a daily plan. And then that kind of transitioned into my business. I was about 2.5 years ago now, my little sister was in her last year of high school. And I'd kind of always had this feeling like I need more than being an athlete. Like I'd had this, like, I want to give back. I want to do more than just be an athlete. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always loved the idea of being creative and coming up with ideas and coming up with like solution products and helping people. And I'd always had this fear, I think, of making a lot of money in a way that's ripping people off. And it's so common in this world. And it's kind of the way that a lot of people end up doing it because it's a shortcut to it. So I was always like, how do I make like a successful career out of helping people? And then my little sister lost a few friends to suicide within like 2 weeks at high school. And I was just like, far out. Like, it happened. She came like home and said like one kid had lost his life to suicide. And I was just like, that sucks. And then 2 weeks later, she said another one. And I kind of, like we all do, like, what can I do? Like, I hate that. Like, I wish I could do something. And I kind of just went like, screw it, I'm going to try and do something. And I'd run a few surf camps for young kids because I was surf coaching a little bit at the time. And I did like a weekend with 8 kids, and then the following weekend with another 8 kids. And I spoke to the one of the exercises I did, because of all this reading and stuff I'd worked out the visualization and meditation was super important to me. So I took the kids from like 12 to 14-year-old kids through a visualization meditation exercise. And after the camp, the parents all said to me, like, apart from like the surfing, the training, the thing that they liked the most was the visualization. And I was like, oh, how cool is that? Yeah. And then when once my sister lost these few friends, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and do something. My dad was like, you should go speak to your old high school teacher, who's a good friend, and ask him if you can come run maybe a workshop or two. And he was like, mate, there's so much market out there for it. There's big budgets for mental health talks and public speakers at schools. You could definitely turn it into a business if that's something you're passionate about. And I was like, yeah, it definitely is. I feel like I've landed on some pretty great things for my own mental health. So if I can maybe go and inspire some kids to pick up on a few of those skills. And yeah, that was when the Good Human Factory was, I guess, came to fruition. And it's been a fun 2-year journey now, sort of building a workshop that's sort of, I'm sure, like sort of trialing, erroring, and finding what works, finding what the kids adapt to, and finding what the kids can really be inspired by. And then, been doing some corporate ones and some sport clubs. It's been a cool journey, and just getting to grow this awareness mental health business and really focus on the prevention rather than cure. I feel like a lot of the other organizations out there are doing amazing things, but so often it's coming and talking about anxiety, depression, suicide, spotting the signs, which is all work that needs to be done. But I mean, the stats are 1 in 5 Australians are going to be diagnosed with a mental illness, but 5 in 5 of us have mental health. And I feel like majority of the other organizations are focusing on that 1 in 5, whereas I'm trying to inspire and educate the other 4 out of the 5 to have the skills to not go down the sort of treadmill of life to the 1 in 5 that have a mental illness.
Yeah, mate, it's unbelievable work, and there's so much work that needs to be done in the space. How have you found the last 2 years building a business in the space? What have been the biggest lessons or biggest takeaways for you?
Oh, it's bloody hard. I felt like I'm very lucky. I've got a great network of people around me, and a lot of successful people around me to mentor me. And I kind of thought going into it, I was like, yep, I've got the blueprint, I've got the profile, I'll be able to just book workshops, I'll be able to start making money straight away. And it's been 2 years and I still haven't taken a cent from the business yet. I'm learning that people always tell you, like, you can't build a successful business. It takes 3 to 5 years to even get going at a pace that you can survive. So it's been a good learning curve and a real good humbler to realize that, it doesn't happen overnight, and there's so many moving parts. And I mean, I've built the whole thing completely by myself. And I'm looking at my screen behind this, the Zoom call right now, and I've got a Shopify online store with, I think I've sold like over 450 T-shirts in the last, actually, I think close to 500 shirts in the last 5 months with messaging around mental health, which is pretty special. But it all just goes back into business to like work out new ways to grow, work out new ways to educate and inspire. And I've had a few good milestones. Like, unfortunately, COVID hit right when I was about to start doing somewhat of a big push to do a lot of workshops. But then last year I pulled back a lot from the workshops as it was a bit weird trying to go into schools when there's lockdowns and in and out of stuff like that. So that was a bit of a stunt, but it gave me the opportunity to really focus on other aspects of the business. Like, I've grown an ambassador team. I'm lucky I've got a great range of friends who are all the top in their sports in the world. I mean, I've got like 4 or 5 world champions ambassadors for me in wakeboarding, FMX, scooter and BMX, a few big name surfers. I'm talking to Robbie Madison right now about becoming an ambassador. So it's starting to people are just starting to appreciate that it's not necessarily just a mental health organization, the Good Human Factory. It's just all around being a good human. It doesn't have to always be to do with mental health. Like, it's about just being kind to people. It's about, I want my like little yellow good logo to be a symbol. I want it to be a reminder. When you see that, it's a reminder to be kind. Like, it's a reminder to be a good human. It's a pretty simple thing, but it takes a lot of work and daily work. And that's what I hope the Good Human Factory can instill in people is, it's not a fixed product like a lot of organizations. It's a constant reminder every day. What are you doing to be a good human? And life's like a treadmill that's dragging us down the spectrum of mental health. And I just think if we can educate and inspire people to have the skills, exactly like this momentum thing, we're doing right now, it's just giving people the skills, because unless you take responsibility for your own mental health and wellness, you're going to struggle. And it's like, you can go and see the best psychologist in the world, pay all the money in the world to have the best support, but unless you're willing to do the work, nothing's going to change. So I'm just trying to educate and inspire as many young people that there is skills out there. Instead of when you get to a really tough point in life, which is inevitable, you have the skills so you can lean on those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of prevention versus, handling the problem once it's there. And so much of the awareness around the mental illness and the mental health chat has been around the idea of how to pick up on symptoms, how to handle them once you've got it. Massive lengths or massive strides in, go and see a psychologist. It's normal to go and see a psychologist, right? And I talk about it as well with my mental health when I'm managing it, and when I've got my bad days and I slip more into my mental illness, which is depression and anxiety, then, it's just super important to rest back on the things that I know do really well for my mental well-being. Exercise, meditation, journaling are the three big ones. Surrounding yourselves with good people, eating good food. 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, not in our brain. And you see our physical health is in such a poor state across the world, especially in Australia, America. Obesity rates are around 50%. And then you look, conversely, you look similarly with mental health. Mental illness is on the rise. So many people are struggling. I think it's 1 in 2 people across their lifetime will suffer from depression or anxiety, at any given stage in their life. It's really damaging and not damaging. It's really scary statistics when you then don't have the answers. And I think companies or businesses like the Good Human Factory, like Momentum, like a bunch of other businesses out there that are actually giving those solutions is the next step. It's like, okay, here are the actual solutions to maintaining good mental health. And no matter where you are on the spectrum, whether you're a 9 out of 10 and you're kicking goals, or whether you're a 1 out of 10 and you're struggling to get out of bed, you need to start to implement some sort of daily routine, some sort of daily ritual where you're doing these things and you're implementing them. Even if it's 30 seconds of meditation at the start, close your eyes for 30 seconds and visualize how you want your day to go, or, small things like that, and build upon them every single day. We spoke about, in the Momentum mentorship about the power of 1% change, and just trying to improve yourself by 1% every single day, and how powerful that can be over a long period of time. And I look through my own mental health, and when my depression and anxiety was at its worst, all my good habits fell away. I wasn't working out. I was eating really shitty food. I wasn't meditating. I was isolating myself in my room with the blinds closed and watching Netflix. It's like all the things that we know improve one's mental state, I wasn't doing. And so my response always to myself when I'm looking at how I'm going, I'm like, well, no shit, you're depressed and anxious, mate. Like, you're not doing anything to help yourself. It'd be like an obese person wondering how they got obese, and then looking through their last year and going, well, I haven't been to the gym once and I've eaten McDonald's every day. It's like, well, no shit, you're obese. Like, the conversation needs to be a bit of like, you need to help yourself, and you need to focus on what you can control and what you're doing in a day-to-day, on a day-to-day basis. And I think, and so what are the I mean, I've touched on a few and that I do. What are your go-tos? What are your go-to tips and tricks for your own mental well-being? What do you kind of rest on that, when you are struggling, or when you have a down day, or when you are super stressed out? What are the things that you fall back on to help you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take you through kind of what I talk about in my workshop, because this is something that I'm super proud of, and a new kind of way to look at mental health that I'm really excited about starting to share. But I look at it like, everybody, imagine your mental health is a bucket, And then we have a bunch of cups sitting around, and every single time something hard happens in your life, whether it be you look at your bank account and you're like, oh shit, I haven't got paid. If you hear that a friend has passed away, or anything that's tough, relationship problems, imagine you keep pouring little things in a bucket. It's going to slowly rise until you get to the top. And I talk about it when I do my workshops. If you let it rise to the top, that's when you get to mental illness. That top 20% of the bucket is when you get to mental illness. And you ask people like, what should you do once this bucket starts rising? Most people will be like, oh, pour it out. But I look at pouring it out as like a mental breakdown or needing to call a psychologist. My analogy that I use, the metaphor I use now, is you want to have different holes all through your bucket. So when I do my workshop now, I'll have 5 holes in my bucket, 5 stickers over them. And I'll say to the kids, like, the first thing that I need to do is take responsibility. Like you said, like you just sort of touched on just then, saying, oh, like, no shit, you're going to feel like that. It's taking responsibility and really reflecting on why you are and being like, you know what, if I want to get better, I need to do work. So the first sticker I'll peel off is responsibility. Then that water's going to start pouring out of the bucket. Then I'll talk about gratitude. Gratitude's a massive one that I try and do every single day because I think it's super important. And it's as simple as at night, writing down 3 things, what went well for you in that day. It can get very tough if you just say, write 3 things you're grateful for every day. It's pretty tough to continue to reflect on that. But if you can just write 3 little wins every day, it just brings that up to the surface and you're like, oh yeah, maybe today wasn't that bad. I'll peel my next sticker off. Water's going to start pouring out. So all these problems have got a way to leak out. The next one is kindness. Kindness is probably the main pillar of the Good Human Factory. There's so much good data studies out there on kinder people are happier people. Like there's one study in America, they gave 1,000 people $20 and they said, you can spend this $20 on yourself or you can spend it on somebody else.
Yeah.
At the start of the day, they gave them a happiness test. And at the end of the day, they gave them a happiness test. I think like 85% of people spent the money on themselves, and the 15% who spent the money on somebody else, obviously you can guess who in the happiness test were happier at the end of the day. So little things like that I feel like we're not taught. So like the 3 things I talk about in my workshops are like, be kind to your mind. So I'll do like a 1-minute breathing exercise, just being still and focusing on your breath for a minute. It's just a great way to be kind to your mind. Be kind to others, as simple as complimenting people, doing a random act of kindness, buying somebody a coffee in the line behind you, like stuff like that can, sure, it's going to make somebody else's day, but it makes you feel good. And then another big one's be kind to the environment. And if you can live by the value of kindness, whether it be using reusable drink bottles, not taking a keep cup to the coffee shop, picking up a bit of rubbish when you walk past it. You don't need to be seen to be doing these things, but if you can live core to that value of kindness to the environment, then you can find purpose in anything. So that's the first 3. It's another sticker peels off the bucket, water starts pouring out. Empathy is one of my other core ones, trying to really think about my situation and then not in a weird way compared to other people's, but just really appreciate how good I do have it in a lot of things. But also take a moment when, if somebody is being cruel to you or being pissing you off, really trying to take a step into their shoes and be like, oh, why are they feeling like this? It's usually come from their insecurities, and just gathering that perspective. And that's where I get a lot from reading. I try and read a lot of autobiographies to understand other people's journeys and be like, wow, they had this crazy story. Everybody has this crazy story. So that gives me a lot of, that helps my mental health a lot.
I love that part because I talk too about the difference between comparing and gaining perspective, right? I can look at you and go, fuck, Cooper's got it so great, fucking rah, like my life's so shit, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. That would be comparing versus using perspective and looking at someone's life and going, okay, fuck, they've got it pretty bad. Like, geez, I've actually got it pretty good here. That doesn't take away from my own troubles, or it doesn't take away from my own experience, but you can use other people to gain perspective over your own life. Whereas comparing is more, you're looking at other people and then completely ignoring your own circumstances or disregarding your own experience. And so I think
it comes back to gratitude.
Yeah, exactly. And I think perspective is so important, but it's not a lot of people are talking about it, right? I'm sure, I don't know if you had a similar upbringing to me, but the standard, parents are trying their best, but like when you're not eating your food, it's like there are kids starving in Africa. It's
Mm.
like, okay, that doesn't really help a 5-year-old eat his food, right? Because now you're just comparing, right? So, but perspective is super powerful. So I really love that point that you just made.
Yeah, so then my 4, and then my 5th one is mindfulness. I mean, you can kind of call it meditation, but I think just mindfulness is so important. Just being really still in the present moment, being entrenched in what you're doing right now. And it's very hard because all of us have got so much shit going on nowadays. There's so much happening. Turn the news on and this is bullshit everywhere. So just trying to really take a bit of time every single day to be mindful and present, get in nature, switch off from technology. I think that's super important. So like, and then, so using this metaphor of the bucket, I peel my 5th sticker off, water pours out. So like down the bucket, there's all different holes. If I've practiced those 5 things on a weekly basis, daily basis is setting the goal very high. Sometimes life does get fast, but as long as I can check in with myself and make sure I do all 5 of those, like responsibility is always the first one to do these 5. And then, gratitude, kindness, empathy, and mindfulness, then my bucket's going to slowly empty no matter what. And then I can have as much shit going in.
Yeah.
It's going to continually empty. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And that's the way I try and encourage people to look at it through my workshops, is to be like, look, your bucket might be way bigger than somebody else's, but unless you reflect and know what you do, like there's a lot of other holes in my bucket, whether it be exercise, eating right, but they're my 5 core ones when it comes to internal that I need to do if I want to, have a good outlook on mental health. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Mate, I love that. So is that the core of your workshops?
Yeah. So that's my workshops. Basically I spend about, 5 to 8 minutes on each one. I have like a challenge for each one. Like I've got little gratitude cards with my Good Human Factory. So I get the kids to write a gratitude card, spend 5 minutes on that. I get them to either take a photo of it and send it to their parents. Because I think as a parent, obviously I'm not a parent, but when I give my parents gratitude cards, they're so stoked, and we don't really give our parents that praise often enough. And I find it is quite confronting as a kid, as a teenager, to go and tell your parents 3 things that you're grateful for. But if you could write it down, send them a photo of it, then the parent will read it and be like, oh, like what? Yeah, that's epic. So that's one of my challenges. I do a mindfulness challenge where we just sit there for a minute and I get them to close their eyes and focus on anything you can hear for a minute. Then keep your eyes closed, focus a minute on what you can feel, from the like wind to your clothes on your skin to you sitting on the chair, and then open your eyes and spend a minute on nothing other than just trying to look around and focus on what you can see, look at the shapes, look at the colors, and just be appreciative of what you can do. So that's gratitude, mindfulness. Yeah, like I said, the kindness challenge is turn to the person next to you and compliment on something, give them a compliment, the minute of breathing, and then, just sort of that tip around kindness when it comes to the environment, I think is a super important one. Yeah. And then responsibility, I have a pretty cool little outtake from one of my podcasts with, this really cool metaphor with a tiger. So I just speak about that for a little bit, tell a bit of a story. Yeah. And then same thing with empathy, kind of share a bit of the story about my family and about my dad, and understanding that perspective's everything, and sort of encourage people to maybe pick up a book every now and then and learn about perspective and understanding. So that's kind of the basis of my workshop. It runs for about 30 to 45 minutes, but I think it's just, the whole goal of it is to show, these are my 5 things. What does your bucket look like? What holes do you have in your bucket? And if you don't have any holes in your bucket, either take some of my ones or start reflecting on some ones that you can, really build on, because inevitable, you're going to have your bucket slowly fill up in life. And unless you do have those holes in it, it's going to overflow. And that's when I feel like you're getting to that mental illness part of the spectrum. And I feel like too many of us are getting to there because we're not aware of this. We're not aware of the skills we have. Like you said before, like it's about taking responsibility and going, all right, I know I need to get outside and get a bit of sunlight and drink a lot of water. So I think that's why responsibility is like the big one.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And I think too that we don't have enough positive outlets for our stress as adults, right? When you think of, and I'm not sure what you what your circle looks like now, but I know when I left high school, all my mates, it was like, you're stressed, let's go for a beer, right? You're stressed, let's go for a beer. You're stressed, let's go to the pub. You're stressed, let's go grab something to drink, right? It was just like our coping mechanisms are not well suited for how stressful life can become. And so we need these constant little reminders. And I love your metaphor. I love the metaphor of the bucket filling up, because that's exactly what happens, right? Stresses fill up in our lives and we don't have any outlet. And and I can't remember who said it, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I can't remember who said it, but someone in the field was talking about, I think he was a psychologist, about depression and anxiety being the human's response, like it's a normal response to an incredibly stressed lifestyle. And so there's a great book by Johann Hari, and it might have even been him that said it, but Johann Hari, called Lost Connections, Why We're Depressed and Anxious. And he talks about,
looking at it right now to the corner of my
book,
eye.
yeah.
I haven't read it yet, but
mate, it'd be my number one book, to be honest, that I've read. And it completely flips the script on what we've been told depression and anxiety is, right? Because we've been told that depression and anxiety is an imbalance in your chemicals in your brain. And he talks about how, whilst that plays a part, it's actually a much smaller part than we think. And over all the research he's done, he came up with 7 other reasons why we're depressed and anxious, from lack of connection. What's that one? Yeah. Self. No, I haven't read that one.
This one's really interesting. It's all about taking responsibility and kind of flipping the switch on, like, that's kind of where I've come up with this thing. Like, doesn't matter how good your psychologist is, unless you're willing to do the work. Anxiety and depression, like, are taught to us through not having the skills to overcome it. And a really cool thing that, I mean, one of my friends is like a freestyle motocross rider. He like talks about, it's like, it's bullshit the way that, like, it's like Australia's the second most medicated for anxiety and depression country per capita in the world.
Wow.
Which is like, absolutely blows me away.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it just means something's wrong with our healthcare system, that too many people just go in there. And working in the industry now, like, I'm all for medication. It's so needed in so many cases. But for us to be the second most in the world, like, we've got a pretty good, I feel like we're uneducated around what skills we can do before we get to that. Yeah. And I think it starts down at the education system. And that's why I'm so passionate. I can see you're so passionate as well.
Yeah.
Is like, I wish more people had the mindset that I was lucky enough to land on from a younger age. Because it's like, it comes back to, self-coaching. And like you said, lost connections. The chemical imbalance is like a cop-out to give someone a pill to like mask it and be like, yep, you're good. Yeah. And it's like treading on light water, thin ice when you work in the industry, and you kind of talk about it like that. But I think stuff like that, the mindset needs to change around it, because
definitely
it's crazy how often you hear of people on anxiety and depression medication, but haven't tried meditation, but haven't tried changing their diet. Yeah. It's like, it's just a quick fix solution. And until people are willing to do the work and take responsibility, like culturally, it's sad that it's like that, but it takes people like myself and yourself who are willing to try and get out there and be young role models and inspire people. Like, this is the way to live. Like, it's fun and cool. It's hard, but do you want to live it easy, depressed on pills life, or do you want to work hard and make something of yourself?
Yeah. And that's the downside, I would say, to living in such a comfortable world, is that there is very little motivation for the average person to step out of their comfort zone and work on themselves and find purpose and do cool things, right? COVID's really highlighted it too. Like so many people, and it kind of surprised me. So many people, like, when they lost their jobs, were like, oh no, like, it's fine. Like, I'm getting paid from the government, so it's fine. I actually didn't like my job, and now I get to sit at home and watch Netflix, and they're like pumped about it. And I'm like, fuck, really? Like, that's like where you see yourself for the next 12, 18, 5 years, 10 years? Like, what, like, for me, it's like, it's difficult going out and running a business for 2 years, right? Like, it's a super hard thing to do, but you're more fulfilled. Your mental health as a result is probably better than if you weren't in alignment with some sort of greater good or some sort of purpose. You mentioned that study, and I actually haven't heard that study, which is awesome. I've heard a different study on that point around go and make other people happy versus yourself. And they did a study out of Harvard, which was they took people from, and they actually segmented it from like the west to the east. So like America, England, Australia, and then like Russia, Asia, and somewhere else. I can't remember what the other country was. And they said the question was, can we make ourselves happier? And all the Western countries went and did something for themselves, and all the Eastern countries went and did something for other people. And so in Western society, the answer was no, you can't make yourself happier. But in all these other societies, it was yes, because they went out and did something for someone else and they were happier as a result. And so I think the way that society is set up right now is very individualistic. It's very much like, do things on your own, not the collective.
It's consumerism. It's so backwards. I remember I was in Japan a couple of years ago, and I was talking to a guy at a sushi restaurant, and I was like, I don't know how I got to talking about this, but we were talking about like happiness, and I was like, it's funny, like in America, Australia, all the Western countries, it's like if you're feeling shitty, it's like retail therapy, go and buy yourself something nice. It's bullshit. Yeah. He's like, no, it's all backwards. If you want to feel good, go and do something nice for somebody else. Yeah. That'll make you feel good. It doesn't cost you anything. But we're like sold by consumerism, really. And the way that we are, like, go and buy yourself a new iPhone and make you feel better. It's like, what, an update? It's the same phone as the last one. So it's like, we just really need to start shifting that mindset that like the way forward is to like go and do something selfless for somebody else. I don't know if you've read Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
I've not.
It's really interesting the way he talks about service is kind of the way of happiness. Like monks will go through their whole life of just service and just meditating, but they're far happier than 90% of people because it's about doing stuff for other people, makes you feel good. Like doing stuff for yourself is just ego driven, really. And sure, like doing stuff for yourself for the right reasons, like self care and stuff is super important. Yeah. But when you're doing it to get ahead and bring somebody else down or take something away from somebody else, it doesn't actually make you feel better.
And it's very fleeting. You go and to take the retail therapy, right? You go and buy something, you feel good, and then you're back down. And then so it's like you have to probably do that every single day and you're doing this anyway. So it's like, whereas you go and do something nice for someone, it might last a bit longer before you come back down. And so you continue that, you'll stay up in that, positive mind frame or that good mental well-being. And I think we're just, one of the things that John Hari talks about is a disconnection from good values. And I think so many of us are walking around not knowing our value system. And so we look to whatever it is that we're getting fed to us to deem what is our values, right? And what you said around consumerism is pretty spot on in terms of what the average person's value is. And it's not until you start to question yourself and bring awareness to those sorts of questions within you around, okay, what are my values actually? Like, what do I want to stand for? And what do I want to be known for? Like, what's the legacy I want to leave behind? And all these sort of questions feed into and can only lead to a long-term increase in your mental well-being and just overall quality of life. Like if you are aligned to something, you're aligned to the good human factor, your overall satisfaction in life is going to be higher because you're like, cool, I'm aligned to something bigger than me. I'm aligned to helping other people.
For sure. And it comes back to like, if you think back to the 5 things I was talking about in my bucket, they're actually 5 values: empathy, gratitude, kindness, mindfulness, and responsibility. So my whole workshop's developed around you finding purpose through values. Too many of us look for our purpose through a goal or a destination. And my psychologist speaks to me about like your goal. I always fuck this metaphor up, but it's like your goal is like getting west on a compass, whereas your values are heading west. You can never get west. Like if you're trying to get west, you're never going to be satisfied. But if you're aligned with your values, you're always going to be moving west and you're going to be aligned and you're going to be happy. So that's something that really, values are a massive one. Like if you ever listen to my podcast, the first thing I always ask all my people, what values did you get instilled in you? It's really values-based because it makes people reflect. And that's something that I'm hoping with the Good Human Factor. I've actually designed 28 days, 28 values workbook that I'm working on. I'm about to do a values course actually with the AIS to upskill a little bit more before I put this workbook out. But like you said, not many of us know our values. So I want to create this workbook so it encourages you to focus on 4 domains of your life, whether it be work life, relationship life, health and wellness, and education, and align, and in each one trying to just align yourself with one value. So over the 28 days, it's like you'll do your gratitude, kind of like a my goals journal, but each day will have a value to focus on, and you'll reflect on how you felt. You'll look into that value and you'll be like, when have I seen that in the community? When have I done that? When have I felt that? And then at the end of the 28 days, you pledge to live by your favorite 4 values. And that can give you purpose just by living by values. So that's something that's in the pipeline for the Good Human Factory. I've fully written this like 80-page journal, but I just haven't done anything with it for a little while because I'm just waiting to do this course so I can really tie that into it a bit more.
Mate, that's awesome. And you've also just launched your new T-shirts, is that right? The tie-dyes that you were talking about. You're actually wearing one that's not for sale. That's your own one, but you do have the tie-dye T-shirts out for sale at the moment.
Yeah, so I just launched. I've just got 2 shirts out. I've got a black and a white that just say "Be kind to your mind" across the chest. And then one that just has my little yellow good logo and it says "Be a good human" on the back. But been some really good feedback. The very first day that I actually bought the shirts, I think I got 100, and I had 100 of them. And I was driving to the snow. I hadn't actually put them on sale. I hadn't even announced that I was doing them, but I just like first got them and I was like, I'll wear it today. Obviously just got them, new shirts, stoked to wear one. And I was driving to the snow and I stopped at Goulburn McDonald's, small places, and a family was sitting across from me, my friend Alex Hayes, who's a pretty big social media star. And he, this dad sort of was looking at us weird and he came over and said to us, he's like, "Oh, hey, how you guys going? Where, my son noticed you guys from social media. Like he said, you're doing really cool stuff in the mental health industry." I was like, "Oh, thanks. I really appreciate you coming to say hi." And then he said, "Oh, what's that shirt you're wearing?" And I was like, "Oh, these are my new mental health, like for my Good Human Factory business. I'm just about to launch these like shirts." I said, "Be kind to your mind." He's like, "Oh, I just thought I'd let you know I suffered a lot of anxiety and depression this year and I've kind of been struggling today and I really needed to see that message. So like, thank you. Like those shirts are great." And I was just like, there's like a full, I'm not a spiritual person that much. And that was like a sign from the universe. The first I'd ever put the shirt on my body, I had somebody, and that was the goal. Obviously it's more than just a t-shirt. It's a way for people to let somebody walk past and pick up a little message, and they are cool looking shirts. And that's where, like you were just talking about, I've just launched the tie-dye range, which I've just been hand tie-dyeing because it's been a bit of a fun little side project for me, but I've been enjoying it and people really like them. And yes, the same ones, just the tie-dye with the "Be kind to your mind," which I feel is just such an important message. I think it's that little reminder you need sometimes. I pick it up when I wear the shirt, I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, "Oh, how am I being kind to my mind today?" So that's that's one of the other little projects with the Good Human Factory, which has been fun. But just heaps of little things like I was touching on before. I've got little gratitude cards that just say 2 spot for a name, "I want to thank you for," 3 spots to write. And I've been leaving them at cafes, and there's actually my local cafe. I just left them a little pile of like 50 of them. So when people are waiting for their coffee, I just say like, what better way to start your day than coffee and gratitude? And they actually started a gratitude wall, and there's like 70 gratitude cards stuck up on the wall from people writing them to their friends, people writing them to themselves, people writing to the baristas. And it's just spreading this like positive movement. It doesn't, it's not directly like, I really try not to even use the word mental health with the Good Human Factory. Like it's just around being a good human. Like it makes it, the good mental health is the byproduct of being a good human. Don't necessarily have to.
Health is the outcome versus like the values is being a good human. Back on
exactly. If you're being a good human, your mental health is going to look after itself. So that's where I'm really trying to use my business. And without the psychology degree and stuff like that, I try to avoid. It's obviously a mental health organization, but I try to avoid anything to do with like the psychology and stuff behind it. I just try and instill better values in people and encourage people to pick up on skills. And it's been going really cool. It's a very humbling thing to do. I get so many great messages. And then one of the other things I do is have my own podcast too, which is just called Good Humans with Cooper Chapman. And that's been such a great journey. I've got such an amazing network of high profile athlete friends, high profile DJ, social media friends. And I just wanted to show people that their lives are sure they're great in the social media and in the limelight, but they go through the same kind of things that we all go through. They have to deal with stuff. And usually to get to that elite status, you've probably gone through almost more than most people, but you've overcome it with different skills and values. So I pick and choose well, I just pick their brains to like, what have you done in those tough moments? And they give their skills, and that's usually why they're so successful. So just giving people that perspective that, oh wait, that person's life isn't perfect. And I've had just such great feedback from that the stories have really been helping people and really been giving them an outlet to be inspired to make some positive changes, because the people that they look up to aren't that different to them anyway.
Yeah. Mate, you're doing unbelievable work. I'm loving seeing your stuff, and I'm loving seeing the growth of the Good Human Factory. And mate, I absolutely love this chat today with you. I'll put all the links to your podcast, to your website, to your Instagram handle, all that sort of stuff in the footnotes. But mate, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and looking forward to seeing your business grow and your brand grow. Yeah,
cheers, mate. It's been great having a chat. It's been nice being a part of this Momentum team of awesome guys, and thank you for inviting me to it. It's been a real eye opener, and it's like you said, it's just taking that responsibility for yourself. And I'm glad I've missed the last 2 sessions because I've been very busy with night meetings, unfortunately, the last 2 Wednesdays, but I'm very committed to it, and I really appreciate being around so many great guys who are willing to do the work and who are those kind of lighthouse figures for the people around them. So very, very grateful to be a part of it.
Mate, it's good to have you in there, and I'll see you on the next group call for sure. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, mate. You too.